In this week's parasha, we have the Megadef, the Mekalel, the guy who cursed God. And in a previous post, I went in detail about who this guy was, where he came from, what his background is all about, and why he cursed God. And what came out of that whole background was based on the Midrashim. I want to take out 2 points. Point number 1 was that why did he curse God? According to opinion number 2 in the Midrash, because he was making fun of the stale bread. How could it be? How could we have a mitzvah in the Torah that we give God bread that's a week old? Even though we know that there was a miracle and the bread was warm and hot and delicious, he made fun of the bread, saying, it can't be. It's 9-day-old bread. It's stale. It can't be. And he's kind of questioning God's miracle that the bread is still going to be warm and fresh after a week goes by. Okay. We also said in the post that who was his mother? His mother was Shlomit Bat Tivri, who was married to Datan. Now, ultimately, his father is an Ish Mitzri, but according to some other Midrashim, Datan adopted him and raised him. And even though we always think of Datan and Aviram as these 2 evil people that do terrible things throughout the Chumash, and they were known as Reshaim, and they did do a bunch of sins, but there were a couple of good things that they did. And according to the Midrashim, one thing that Datan and Aviram did was very nice, is they were the Jews that were in between the Egyptian taskmasters and the Jewish harder workers, and they would take the beating whenever the Jewish slaves who were working in the bricks didn't get enough bricks. They would take the beating on behalf of the rest of the Jews. So that's one nice thing they did. Another nice thing they did over here was they said that Datan raised this child, even though it seems to be from the Midrashim that he knew that this child really wasn't his, but was the product of his wife. Let's go the positive way. His wife being raped by an Egyptian, so he raised the child that was born. So here's the idea that I was thinking of this morning, that I came up with this morning. Lanut dati. I think it works out with all the Midrashim. So his stepfather who raised him was Datan. There's another midrash earlier on in Parashat Beshalach. When the Jews left Egypt, they crossed over the sea, and early on they didn't have food. So God made a miracle, and he had man fall down, mina shamayim. And the man falls down, and it says, God says, don't take more than, on every day take only enough for that one day. But on Friday, take a double portion. And it said that first Shabbat, 2 people sinned and went out and collected the bread. As if they didn't trust Moshe, they didn't trust God. They didn't believe that the man would stay warm up until Shabbat. The man would still be fresh and edible on Shabbat. Because until that day, everything only lasted for one day. And by the next morning, if you left anything over, it would rot. So they didn't believe. So they went out on Shabbat to gather more man. Says the Midrash, who were those 2 guys that went out and didn't believe the bread would stay fresh? Datan ve'Aviram. So that isn't it interesting? The stepfather who raised this child over here, who's making fun of the bread not being fresh, is the same person who didn't believe that the man would stay fresh until the next day. So I thought that was a cool connection between the 2. I think it makes total sense. I think the math works out over there. One last idea I was thinking about, but I didn't have time to look into, is they say that they put this cursor in jail with the Mekoshesh Eitzim, the guy who broke Shabbat by breaking the trees later on. We're gonna find in the next Sefer in Bamidbar this guy who broke Shabbat. So according to the Midrash, the cursor is put in jail together at the same time with the Mekoshesh. And I said, wouldn't it be interesting if this Mekoshesh who broke Shabbat, it's a pretty similar story to the Datan taking the man out on Shabbat. It's not the same story, but I'm curious if there's some kind of connection between these 2. Or actually, I already saw one connection. There are different opinions. One opinion says that if the Jews would keep 2 Shabbats in a row, Mashiach would come. So I saw one Midrash says that the first Shabbat after the giving of the Torah was broken by Datan. The Shabbat was given already at Marah previously. The first Shabbat that was broken was by Datan taking the man, and the second Shabbat was broken by the Mekoshesh breaking the Eitzim. So there seems to already be a little bit of a connection going on over there, but a lot of these Midrashim, the chronology is a little bit complicated. But just my thoughts. Shabbat Shalom.